Hey everybody, and welcome to my video today. Today we're going to look at Habs players and Rocket players that have something to prove going into this, I want to say playoffs, but I mean Habs might not make the playoffs, but into this qualifying round and hopefully into the playoffs. So I'm going to give you 9 Montreal Canadiens and 5 of the Rocket that I think will be part of the taxi squad at the very least, and maybe actually playing games. So we'll get right into it, and we're going to look at the Habs players. Now, the number 9 is actually not just one player, but it's a line, and I think it's really crucial, and they do have something to prove. So it's Montreal's number 1 line. I think everybody knows that is Tatar, Danault, and Brendan Gallagher. What do they have to prove? They are one of the top lines in the league. For Phil Danault, he deserves to be in the Frank Selke conversation. I think the line is they have something to prove. I think Montreal Canadiens, everyone kind of looks down on Montreal. It's been 27 years since the last Stanley Cup. As a Habs fan, I know back in the 70s, I mean, Montreal was the team. You either loved them, you hated them because of their success, one of the two. And now people just, because they haven't had any success really lately, kind of look down on us, right? So I find the players that excel here, they kind of have that, I guess, a block. I don't know what you want to call it. But this number 1 line of Montreal's is top, at least in the top 5 in the NHL, and they got something to prove. If they can do their job, play well, they can bring this team along. They could be a huge part of any success that Montreal has, especially against Pittsburgh, shutting down their top line or their top 2 lines, because you got Malkin and Crosby centering both lines. And yeah, they've got some. I think they have something to prove. So they're my number 9. Number 8. Number 8 is, again, I don't know if everyone's going to agree with me, Carey Price. What does Carey Price have to prove? I know as a video creator, and I follow everything really closely, as close as I can, there's so much talk about how Carey Price he's kind of done. He's not the Carey Price he was. Carey Price is shit. He can't play. He's horrible. All that, right? That's been a lot of the talk, especially this last season, when they had those 8-game losing streaks, and I think another 5 or 6-game losing streak. And yeah, so there's a lot of talk. Carey Price can do some damage here. Carey Price can get his reputation completely back as far as how, I guess, fans see him. I don't know. I know that the people who are in hockey who know what they're talking about, he doesn't need to prove anything to them. But I really think he does, and he can go a long way in this qualifying round by proving that he's still a top goaltender, if not the top goaltender in the league. So Carey Price, number 8. Number 7. Number 7 is Paul Byron. Paul Byron started last season horribly. He was horrible. I don't know what else you want to say. He got injured the same game that Drouin got injured. I think it was the 19th game against Washington. And he had a very long rehab and recovery. And when he finally did come back to play, it took him a couple of games, and then he was the Paul Byron that we hadn't seen in a while. Maybe better than any time we've ever seen him. And I think he needs to continue that. It was only 5 or 6 games that he got to show us what he really has. And I think he needs to cement himself again by proving that he's still capable of playing the way he always has played, and that he's a very important part of the Montreal Canadiens. Next up is Nick Suzuki. Yeah, that's how you spell it. Nick Suzuki, who on Twitter is getting the nickname Big Dick Nick. Nick Suzuki what does Nick Suzuki have to prove? He has to prove that he's the real thing, that he's got a great potential, his ceiling is high, he's got all this talent, and he can use it and help the Canadiens to win. And I think that he still has that to prove. He's a rookie. Every rookie has that. But I think being that Montreal hasn't seen a player like Nick Suzuki in a while, that, yeah, I think he has something to prove going into these playoffs. And I think he will I think he will prove that he's going to be a great player. Next up is Jonathan Drouin. Jonathan Drouin. What does Jonathan Drouin have to prove? Well, he has to prove that he's the Jonathan Drouin of the first 19 games of the season before he got hurt. He was playing amazing. He was leading. He was at least amongst the leaders of the team in points, and just the way he played aggressively, doing things he never did, going after the puck, retrieving the puck, winning battles for the puck, being physical, and being successful. He needs to prove that that's the player that he's going to be, and he is, and not the player from the previous few seasons. And yeah, so I think Drouin does have something to prove, and I think we'll see. You know, I guess I'm really hoping that we will see the Drouin of the first 19 games. I'm not 100% confident either, but that's what he needs to prove. Next up is a defenseman, Brett Kulak. Brett Kulak needs to prove what kind of a defenseman he is. Is he the Brett Kulak of last season, 2018-19? Is he the defenseman of this past season, where it's kind of up and down? You don't know what Brett Kulak's coming to play, and you don't know. He was better in the last part of the season, yes, but he was hot and cold all up until that point, mostly cold, and we need to know what kind of defenseman he is. He's got 1 year left on his contract. 1 year left on his contract, and he needs to show us that he's the Brett Kulak we saw not this past season, but the season before, where I thought he was quite good. Next up, number 3, is another defenseman, Victor Mete. Now, Mete might not be able to show us and prove anything because we don't know. He had a broken foot, I think it was, and he's not in Montreal right now, and best I can find out is still it's up in the air. We don't know whether he's ready to play or not. So if he is ready to play, he's got something to prove. He needs to prove his worth here to get another contract. His ELC will be up. He'll be signing his first RFA contract. Is he a top 4 defenseman? Is he third pairing defenseman? Is he big enough? Is he capable enough? Can he score? He's got a lot of stuff to prove. Honestly, he does. And I'm hoping he's healthy and he's here. It'll leave a bit of a hole in the Montreal's defense if Victor Mete is not healthy and not ready to go. Next up, number 2, goaltender, Charlie Lindgren. Lindgren has a lot to prove. There are a lot of people who think Lindgren is good enough and he's shown enough, and I'm not one of those. I'm not saying he's not good enough, because at times he shows that he can be really good, a really good, solid backup goaltender, and then his game breaks down. And I don't know. So he hasn't, to date, to me, shown that he's a legitimate NHL backup goalie, and he needs to do that. He's in the last season, I believe, of his contract, and do they re-sign him? Do they keep him around? What do they do with him? He's got something to prove. Will he get the opportunity to prove it here? I don't know. I really don't. But if he does get an opportunity to get in the nets, he's going to need to show that he's got what it takes. And the number 1 Montreal Canadien, who needs to show something and prove that he's got what it takes to be in the NHL, is Charles Hudon. Charles Hudon had lots of, came into Montreal with lots of promise. His ceiling wasn't like unlimited, but he had a good ceiling and good potential, and he's never reached that at the NHL level. He's shown it in the AHL. He needs to show it here. If he has any hopes to stay with the Montreal Canadiens and maybe even just in the NHL, he needs to show something here. I think he'll get an opportunity, not on a top line, but it'll be on the 4th line, maybe as high as the 3rd line, depending on how things shake out and if there are any injuries and anything happens. He has an opportunity here to show that at least he's a bottom 6 forward and worthy of keeping him here. So he has, I think, probably the most to prove, Charles Hudon, because otherwise he's off to the KHL more than likely next season. So what does he want to do? Does he want to be an NHLer or a KHLer? It's kind of up to him. So now we're going to move over to the Laval Rockets. So these are Laval Rocket players that I believe will obviously be in camp, will be on at least the taxi squad. And I think 2 of these guys, and possibly maybe as many as 4, could actually be playing at some points, especially if Montreal advances. So we'll get to number 5. Number 5 may surprise people that I have him here, Caden Primo. Now, what does Caden Primo have to prove? He had an excellent season in Laval, voted their Rookie of the Year. Numbers were fantastic. What does he have to prove? He played 2 games in Montreal. He looked shaky in the first period of the first game, and after that, he looked great. So what does he have to prove? He has to prove that he's capable to back up Carey Price. He has to prove that he's an NHLer, which I think in 2 games he hasn't proven that, but he's got the pedigree, he's got the talent, he's got the competitive toughness and drive, and I think he needs to prove that possibly he's the guy for the job next season. And that's what I think he has to prove. So that's Caden Primo, number 5. Next up is a guy probably going to laugh at that maybe we don't even want him to prove it and be here, but it's Carl Hausner. Hausner doesn't really need to prove anything to Montreal necessarily. I think he's got 1 year left on the last deal, so next year is the last year of his contract. But if he wants to stay in the NHL, and if he wants to stay with Montreal, which I don't see that happening, but if he wants to stay in the NHL, he needs to prove something here if he gets an opportunity to play. So if he gets an opportunity, he needs to show us that he's an NHLer, and he hasn't really shown us that. Maybe in spurts and spots, but he needs to show on a consistent basis, given an opportunity, that he takes advantage of it and proves that he is an NHLer. And maybe he'll get an opportunity. Maybe someone will reach out, want to trade for him, or at least the Habs could buy him out, and he finds a job. He's going to need to prove it here. Number 3 is a guy that I think he'll do fine. But Cale Fleury, he was in Montreal last season. They sent him down. He needed a little bit more seasoning. I love his physical play. He's a great checker. I just love the physical aspect of his game. He needs to show a little bit more on the offensive side, just a little bit more. And I think if he gets an opportunity to play, and he just might, because there's a bit of a hole on that third pairing defense on the right side, which he would fill. Him or Noah Juleson. I don't know where else that's going to come from. So he's going to probably get an opportunity. He needs to take advantage of it, especially if he wants to be playing in Montreal next season. This would be a great time to show that being demoted and coming back up, that he's ready, that he's ready to go. So number 2 is an interesting one. I'm going to put his nickname because that's Kkka, Jesperi Kotkaniemi. Now, the big question has been for the last little while, is Kkka ready? Is he healed from his spleen injury? What's he doing and all that? So it came out today, and I guess if you watch the video, you see my thumbnail. I'm going to use, haven't made the thumbnail yet, but I'm going to use the picture that's probably going to, the thumbnail is of him. He's looking awesome. He's training hard, working with 2 really great coaches, one for the hockey side and one for the skating side. And these are guys that I was reading just recently that these are guys that turn the Finnish players go to these guys to turn them around when they're struggling and to make them into solid NHLers. And they've got a great track record. And he went to them, and he's a coachable kid. He looks great as far as physically ready. I think they're showing him playing tennis in the picture. And I think Kkka has a lot to prove. There's so much talk about that he's a bust, that Montreal shouldn't have reached out for him in 3rd. They picked him 3rd overall, and it wasn't worthwhile, and he's never going to be as good as they think, and blah, 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 blah. He's only barely 20 years old, and I think he's got a lot to prove, and I think he may get the opportunity. From what I see, his physical shape, the trainers that he's working with, Kkka may be ready to come in and fill in for Max Domi, because I don't think Max Domi will be able to play. If that's the case, it's going to be a big difference for the Habs' chances against the Penguins. I think that Kkka doing this by training with these, it's a skating coach, like a top skating coach, a top hockey coach. it shows his desire to be better, to maybe be the best, to be an NHLer, to get promoted back into the main club, and be the player that everybody was hoping that he would be before some idiots started calling him a bust. He's not a bust at his age. There's no way he's a bust. So Jesperi Kotkaniemi, a lot to prove, and if he gets the opportunity, I'm feeling very confident that he's going to show something. He looked great in that picture. So now the last one. Number 1 for the Rocket, and the last one here on this list is the guy who you're probably saying, how come he hasn't said his name? Ryan Poehling. Ryan Poehling actually may get the opportunity as well because with that hole at center, I don't really think he's shown enough yet to fill in for Domi's third line center spot, or take the second line center spot and allow Suzuki third line, where a lot of the offense is probably going to come from. And I don't think Ryan Poehling, I don't think he definitely hasn't shown enough for that. But he could get an opportunity here, playing either on the wing, maybe playing fourth line center. He can get an opportunity here. He needs to take advantage of it. He had such high hopes. That last game of, not this past season, the one before, against Toronto, he got a hat trick. He got the goal, the game winner in the shootout. Such high hopes, and then the concussion in the last training camp, and he just never seemed to recover, or maybe he wasn't ready, and that's what all it showed. He had time in Laval. He may need some more time, but this is a great opportunity for Ryan Poehling to show that he's still that great prospect, maybe their top prospect, or right up in the top 3. And he's going to need to do that if he gets an opportunity here. And I think he'll get somewhat of an opportunity. I don't know how much ice time or when he'll even get it, if he'd get it in the qualifying round, or if they happen to beat Pittsburgh, going farther down the road. So we'll see, but he really needs to take advantage of it. You could put these guys 1 and 2. Either way, it doesn't matter. These two guys really have something to prove here. I think. Actually, of all the guys on the board, probably, you got Kkka and Poehling and Charles Hudon and Lindgren. Probably have the most to prove to the Habs, because for these two guys here, it's the contracts. They're going to get another contract or they won't. They need to prove that they deserve it. And these two guys, they're young and up and coming, and they need to prove that they're worth taking a spot on the roster, on the main roster, and going forward and being part of the Habs' future success. So there you go. That's who I think need to prove the most between the Montreal Canadiens and the Rocket, and guys that should play in this qualifying round, and if Habs move beyond that. So if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. While you're heading down there, leave any comments about who I put up here on the board. If you think somebody shouldn't be there, if you think somebody else should be there, let me know. Let me know why. And yeah, do that in the comment section. And while you're down there doing that, if you haven't subscribed already, please head down there and subscribe and ring the notifications bell. And that's going to get you your daily fix of Blue Blanc Rouge right here at Talking Habs. And that's it. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Please stay safe out there from the virus, because everything's opening up and everyone's, just wear a mask when you're out in public with people and you can't stay away that distance. You got to wear a mask. It's really important. Keep washing your hands. It's very important. It really is. And any of the protesting going on, which is going on all over the world. So wherever you are, stay safe. If you're going to the protest, that's great. I totally encourage that. Just stay safe. And yeah, I want you back to watch more Talking Habs videos. So once again, thanks everybody for watching. Really do appreciate it. And peace out, y'all. See you next video.